We have a very special guest tonight, George Perantoni, and he and his dad. Pardon? Robert. And that's Robert. Okay, Robert. Well, he's Robert. If we don't treat him right, he's going to turn off the camera. Right? Robert and George Perantoni are going to help their dad with a special presentation. At the end, Victor's going to hand us each a complete collection of Italy used in never in.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Grazie per questa opportunità.
Thank you for the opportunity of being able to make this presentation to you. We would like to introduce his son, Robert and George.
Questa sera voglio presentarvi dei francobolli della Prima Guerra Mondiale.
This evening I would like to present to you some stamps of the First World War,
che sono molto rari,
which are very rare.
Rarissimi.
Which are very rare, in fact, extremely rare.
Che perfino non si trovano nei cataloghi moderni, sono nel 1940 in poi.
Which cannot even be found in any modern catalogs since 1940.
A ogni modo ho portato con me il liceo del 1940.
In any case, he brought a 1940 copy of the Mitchell catalog
Per farvi vedere, sono veramente catalogati fino a quell'anno.
to show you that they have been cataloged up to that year.
Si trattano di piccoli collezioni di bolli di francobolli commemorativi, invece questi sono una edizione speciale.
These are of a collection of stamps which commemorate a battle of the First World War.
Però questi sono tipicamente francobolli commemorativi.
But these are not typical commemorative stamps.
Invece queste sono edizioni speciali durante una sola battaglia.
But these are an edition of only one battle.
Ed hanno esistito solo 2 giorni.
And they existed only 2 days.
Infatti erano stati emessi da un ufficiale polacco dell'esercito austro-ungarico.
In fact, these were put out and emitted. Is that the right word to use? Issued. These were issued by a Polish officer of the Austro-Hungarian army, which was the villain army of World War I, I guess, during a postal emergency.
Prima che vi spiego il racconto di questi francobolli è la battaglia di cui sono nati.
Before I explain to you and tell you the story of these stamps and the battle in which they derive from,
Volevo rammentarvi la politica storica e geografica di quei tempi.
I would like to remind you of the history of politics and geography of those days.
L'impero austro-ungarico occupava una grande parte dell'Europa centrale ed orientale.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire occupied a large part of the Central and Eastern Europe.
Incluso c'erano anche le province italiane di Trento e Trieste.
In that empire, the westernmost part of it, there were the Italian provinces of Trento and Trieste.
Certi di voi ricorderanno che la guerra incominciò subito dopo la morte dell'arciduca Ferdinando nel luglio 1914.
Many of you will remember that the war started right after the death of the Archduke Ferdinand in July of 1914.
Come voi sapete, lui e la sua moglie erano stati assassinati da un giovane serbo che li sparò la loro macchina viaggiando nella città di Serajevo.
Like you know, he and his wife were assassinated by a young Serb who shot them in their car while they were traveling through the city of Sarajevo.
Lo stesso giorno che hanno rappresentato come l'erede al trono d'Austria.
This was the same day that he presented himself as I think it's heir to the Austrian throne.
Infatti, tornando dalla cerimonia della strada, visitava i feriti all'ospedale che avevano lanciato una bomba nella carrozza.
In fact, he was returning from that presentation when they were shot. He was on his way to visit some wounded people who were hospitalized after a bomb was thrown at his car, missed the car, and on his way to this presentation.
Quel giorno era destinato l'arciduca a morire. Si è venuto a sapere che dalle interrogazioni che quel giorno erano presenti altri 19 altri attentati.
From interrogations that day, they found out, subsequent to the assassination, they found out that on that day there were 19 planned assassinations for the Archduke. There was no coincidence. All of them from Serb people.
Quel giorno era lui destinato a morire.
And that day he was destined to die. He woke up destined to die.
E i venti della guerra esplosero in tutta l'Europa.
And the winds of war exploded throughout Europe.
Tra i svariati fronti di guerra l'Austria si è battuta contro l'Italia sulla faccenda delle province di Trento e Trieste.
Among the various war fronts, Austria fought against Italy on those two provinces, the Trento and Trieste provinces.
Uniti con la Germania, hanno sfondato il fronte italiano il 24 ottobre del 1917 a Caporetto.
In alliance with Germany, the Austro-Hungarians broke through the Italian front on 24 October 1917 at Caporetto.
In pochi giorni hanno occupato 18 grossi paesi, cittadine dell'Alto Adige e del Friuli. È stata impiegata l'avanzata era diretta verso Venezia.
In only a few days, they occupied 18 towns and small cities of the higher region of the Adige River, and they were pushing towards Venice, Italy.
Nella battaglia erano molti morti e feriti, da tutte e due le parti. E molti,
During the battle, there were many wounded and dead people on both sides of the front.
molti equipaggi furono distrutti, fra i quali fu distrutto il camion della forza militare austriaca.
In the battle, there were many casualties and much equipment was destroyed, among which was destroyed the military post truck. That is the truck, the van that carries the military postal equipment and supplies.
La battaglia ha cessato quando il retrogrado italiano ha attraversato il fiume Piave.
The battle came to an end when the Italian retrograde crossed the Piave River, and there was no,
E distrussero i ponti.
and they destroyed the bridges.
Come un miracolo di Dio, continuò a piovere torrenzialmente hanno ingrossato la forza del piave, causando agli austriaci da non campeggiare e attraversare nella riva opposta senza poter più avanzare.
It was like a miracle from God that during that, at the end of that battle, there was alluvial type storms, rain showers, where the Piave River had swollen and causing any sort of attempts to cross the river had come to an end. There was no way they could cross, and both armies were camped on both sides of the river.
Appena campeggiati i soldati austriaci e tedeschi si sono messi a cercare cosa per dar notizie a casa della battaglia e dell'avanzata.
As soon as they camped, the soldiers of the Austria-Hungarian and the Germans immediately went to write at home to give notices of the battle and the breakthrough, and also about the dead and the wounded.
Più un altro è a dare le commissioni, purtroppo gli unici francobolli del post militare furono bruciati e distrutti dal camion.
These letters were very important to them. They wanted to tell their families that they were still alive. And but the only stamps of the military post were destroyed with the truck that burned down.
Il capo delle poste militari era un tenente polacco dell'esercito austro-ungarico. Visto anche in quel tempo non c'era, la colonia era occupata dall'Austria e si chiamava Covasech.
The man in charge of the military post for that unit was a lieutenant, a Polish lieutenant of the Austro-Hungarian army, and his name was Covasech.
Siccome mancavano i francobolli per mettere sulle lettere e cartoline dei soldati campeggiati, Covasech aveva deciso che la situazione era sufficientemente critica da dover mettere dei francobolli speciali immediatamente, i francobolli provvisti d'emergenza.
Because the stamps were not available for the soldiers to put on their letters, Covasech, the lieutenant in charge of the military post, decided that the situation was sufficiently critical to make an emission or an issue of new stamps, something special, provisionary stamps of urgency or emergency.
La sua immaginazione, Covasech ha cercato una fabbrica di fiammiferi che era situata presso uno dei 18 a Udine. Udine è una più grande città di quelle occupate alla provincia.
Using his imagination, Covasech went back to one of the cities, the largest city that was occupied in that advance, and found a match factory, which is located in one of the 18 towns that were taken or occupied. And this town was the town of Udine.
Questa fabbrica aveva tantissimi bolli tasse per chiudere i fiammiferi.
This factory had many sheets of stamps which are used to seal taxable merchandise, tax seals, that is used a lot in Europe to seal things like alcohol, tobaccos, and stamps. And here's an example. It's still used today. They use little seals on alcohol, tobacco, and stamps. I think we have something like that on our alcohol here.
Questi sensati molto simile ai francobolli postali e hanno una parte disegnata in 4 colori.
These tax seals are very similar to postage stamps, at least those in Europe are. And they have one part in which has a design and usually come in 4 colors.
Covasech si è fatto dare un mucchio di questi francobolli
Covasech took from the factory many sheets of these tax seals.
e poi si è fatto sovrastampare su ogni francobollo il nome delle 18 città occupate.
And he also had the names of the 18 occupied cities and towns of this advance stamped over all of the stamps.
Creando una serie di 4 francobolli di 4 colori per ognuno delle 18 città occupate.
So he created a series of 4 stamps, there are 4 colors, for each one of the 18 towns, a complete series of 72 stamps.
Appena tornato al campeggio ha distrutto appena tornato al campeggio ha distribuito i francobolli ai soldati che aspettavano per scrivere a casa.
As soon as he returned to the camp that same day, he distributed these stamps to the soldiers.
Ed ha spedito al comando le lettere dei soldati assieme alla sua relazione a Vienna, della sua creazione postale.
And he received their letters and then forwarded all to the higher command, the letters of the soldiers, along with his relation or his explanation to Vienna of what he created, his creation of 72 stamp series.
Assieme a una completa serie 72 bolli tasse per commemorativi la loro vincite nella battaglia.
Like I said, he sent to Vienna a relation or an explanation of what he did, plus he sent one full series of the 72 stamps which commemorate the winnings of that battle.
Dopo 3 giorni il signor Covasech ha ricevuto da Vienna il rimpiazzo del military post con l'ordine di distruggere e rimettere alla sua creazione, distruggere le sue creazioni commemorative dei 18 paesi occupati.
After 3 days, on the 3rd day, Covasech received from Vienna a replacement of military post stamps and an order to destroy all the remaining series of this creation of his, which commemorates the 18 towns, made with tax seals for stamp for matches. Yes.
Covasech era pure un filatello appassionato e ha seguito i suoi ordini esattamente.
Covasech was also a passionate philatelist. Philatelist. And but he did not follow his orders exactly.
Se ne ha tenuto 72 per qualità.
He did not follow his orders because of his passion for stamps. He kept 72 sheets of this creation, and then he burned the rest. The 72 would be himself, but he had one sheet for every city. Okay.
Andiamo avanti, Covasech è nascosto i polli interi, continua, dei 72 e dopo la guerra ha portati a casa dove abitava a Lwow, che giorni dopo questo parte della Polonia è diventata Russia.
So Covasech hid one sheet of each type of these 72 stamps. And after the war, he brought them home where he lived in Lwow. It was called then Leopold, but it was changed to Lwow because now that part of Poland is Russia since World War II. Now comes the story of my dad. In Leopold, Lwow,
La città dove abitava Covasech.
the city where Covasech was from.
Perché mio padre si recò a operare una taverna, ristorante che vendeva il vino italiano.
Because his father, my grandfather, went there to operate an Italian restaurant, tavern, and sold and exported Italian wine.
In quel tempo ero un filatelico principiante e sono venuto a conoscenza col signor Covasech, che era l'organizzatore del circolo filatelico del Lwow.
In those days, he was a young stamp collector, an early starter, and he came to know Mr. Covasech in person, who was the organizer and leader of the stamp club in Lwow, Leopold.
Per molti anni Covasech fu il presidente del club filatelico e io scambiavo con lui francobolli italiani per i suoi svariati europei.
For many years, Mr. Covasech was the president of the stamp club in Lwow, and I, my father, traded stamps with him. He traded Italian stamps to him for his various European stamps.
Un giorno, in cambio a una larga somma di francobolli italiani, lui mi ha offerto una serie completa della sua creazione dei 72 francobolli tasse.
One day, in exchange for a large sum of Italian stamps, Mr. Covasech offered my father one complete series of his 72 stamp creation made from tax seals, which commemorated the 18 towns and cities won by that war.
Per poco tempo durante la guerra, perché con la perdita della guerra l'Austria ha anche perso questi 18 città, eppure tutta la regione italiana di Trento e Trieste.
Yeah, the commemoration of these 18 towns was a short-lived commemoration because after the war, Austria lost all of that territory and the entire Trento and Trieste region.
Covasech mi ha spiegato che lui ha creato questi francobolli per se stesso.
Covasech explained to him then that he created those stamps.
E mi spiegò come faceva il corso solo per 2 giorni li ha venduti.
And he explained to him how they only existed, were in issue only for 2 days.
Solamente per 2 spedizioni dei soldati competenti campeggiati sul Piave,
which were only 2 days used by soldiers to send letters when they were camped on the river Piave. That's just that's a modern commemoration of that particular
After 50 years.
front. It's not a letter mailed with we'll get to that.
I soldati sul piano durante i famosi 2 giorni. Assieme alla serie dei 72 francobolli, qua presentati per voi da vedere, Covasech mi ha anche offerto delle buste e cartoline che furono scritte durante i 2 giorni sui francobolli testi.
Along with one series which Covasech offered my father, which my father has here presented to you to inspect, he also offered him some envelopes and postcards which actually were sent from the River Piave with these tax seals during those famous 2 days.
Fino a quei giorni vorrei poter calciarmi nel sedere per non aver accettato dal signor Covasech l'offerta.
Until even today, he would like to kick himself in his seat
Because
for not having accepted the entire offer.
this is very, very original.
In other words, he's got a series, but he does not have any envelopes or postcards.
Lui era un forte negoziante, non ha accettato il forte prezzo di scambio.
He was a very strong negotiator, and my father did not accept the strong price for that particular exchange.
Dice, hai tu bianchi, dai.
He was too young to realize the value of what he was being offered.
Quindi ho perso l'occasione della serie completa di text service sul principio delle offerte su buste e cartoline spedite dai soldati sul piano.
So he only accepted one entire series of these tax seal stamps, but he renounced or did not accept the offer to buy to exchange for the envelopes and postcards which were sent in these tax seals.
Non so esprimermi e voi questo mi sono pentito, quanto mi sono pentito ed ancora mi pento.
He doesn't know how to express to you how much he is sorry for this and continues to be sorry because these letters and these envelopes and postcards would have been even much more rare than these series.
Oh yes, originale. A quel tempo sono venuto a sapere che Covasech ha cambiato 2 altre serie complete per delle collezioni di antichi stati italiani con un mio caro amico filatelico di Verona.
At that time, my father came to find out, or became aware, that Mr. Covasech was also exchanging with an Italian stamp collector who was also a very close friend of my father.
My friend, very good friend.
He exchanged 1 more of these series, correction, 2 more of these series, with Mr. Renzo Bernardelli, which is a very close friend of my father from Verona, Italy.
Nel 1987 il signor Bernardelli morì.
In 1987, Mr. Bernardelli died.
E io ho visto su riviste italiane, bollettini filatelici, l'offerta di queste 2 serie provvisorie del Veneto invaso dall'Austria.
And after his death, my father saw on Italian stamp collector bulletins that it was offered up for sale 2 series of these particular stamps, of the provisionary stamps used during the occupation, the short occupation.
Altro di queste due serie, oltre di queste due serie, non conosco dove siano altre, né cosa sia successo del Mr. Covasech dopo la seconda guerra mondiale.
Other than these 2 particular series that he knows Mr. Covasech gave to Mr. Bernardelli, my father has no knowledge at all of any other series of that may have been collected. And he doesn't know either what might have happened to Mr. Covasech since World War II.
Però sono venuto a sapere che 2 anni fa, 1990, una di queste serie è stata venduta a Milano all'asta per lire 1.200.000 lire.
But my father came to find out only 2 years ago, in 1990, that one of these series was sold in Milano, Italy, for 1.2 million lira, which is about $1,000. And he has a copy of the bulletin that we're talking about in 1990, showing these stamps up for sale at an auction in Milano.
This is pari a $1,000.
It's about $1,000 for the series.
E l'anno scorso un'altra serie è stata venduta all'asta a Firenze per 1.800.000 lire.
Then last year, one more series came up in the bulletin, being sold at an auction in Firenze, that's Florence, for 1.8 million, which is about $1,500.
Io presumo che queste erano le 2 serie che Covasech ha inviato in Italia.
My father assumes that these are the 2 series that Covasech sold to Bernardelli back in before the 1930s, that time, because he knew those went there, and until after Mr. Bernardelli died, only after he died, these things came out of the bulletins. My father has here, he has the 72 series on these 3 sheets, and he wrote next to them the names of the towns, which those of you who have better eyesight than he does, you could have read them yourselves rather on those stamps. And then he has the military post replacement. These came in to replace these stamps 2 days after they're issued. Here he has a 1940 catalog of Mitchell, and in it you find the catalog for these provisionary stamps. But on the side page before that, you will see the military post regular right next to it on the page just before that. That there is only a
commemoration 50 years after the battle in Piave.
That's a commemorative cover for 1917. Well, anyhow, it's a 50-year commemoration of that battle on the river, and it shows the 2 armies on both sides of the river. And here he has one modern tax seal stamped or sealed matchbook. Here,
George, can you ask him why they are no longer listed? What happened?
perché non portano più il catalogo?
Because today, oggigiorno, tutti i cataloghi non portano tutte le edizioni.
Okay, my father says that today, nowadays, the modern catalogs, those that are available, don't carry everything like it was expected.
Ran out of space.
Because this is, long time ago this is catalog. And today, this is 4 big catalog.
Amico mio, va bene, molto grazie.
Welcome. we always have to speak to each other. I've had form.
Very unusual sort of thing that happened. He asked questions about America.
You know, I just
I'm not flattered. I'm not flattered.
That's a smart thing.
I got the second program.
This is original.
The local, okay.
This is big city in the province. This is the bigger the other.
Okay.
This is regular stamp. I got a catalog, I think so. The Lwow stamp.
I think, is there no company that puts out an Italian catalog in Italy? In Italy, no one.
No, Italia, no. Bisogna più. Chi è la specializzazione catalog?
They had on the graph out there with the revenue, take everything off, it's not red revenue, it's not Italian army.